Hello everyone, my name is Bobby Lambert. Currently I'm the Director of Bands at Wando High School in South Carolina. Before that, I was the Assistant Director at Marian Catholic High School in Chicago Heights, Illinois for 13 years. When I was asked to speak on Secrets of the Master Teacher, my first and strongest reaction was, I am not one, nor do I have total program success, but rather I'm a struggling teacher who has had more visible success than failure. So I made the subtitle Stolen Secrets. The place I find myself and have found many great teachers with whom I have worked is always seeking balance. School time versus home time, student assessment versus student care, program growth versus individual commitment are just a few of the things that I struggle with virtually every day. I find that there's rarely a time when I feel as if all things are in equilibrium, but rather like plates spinning on precarious poles, some have momentum while others are tipping and slowing. Defining and discovering success for any program is much like planning for a trip. There are many different destinations, but there are two things that always constitute a good journey: a destination that is worthwhile and momentum toward that destination. Once a destination is determined, you must then acquire provisions and supplies, and finally, plot out the landmarks in between to mark forward progress. Each program should have a 1, 3, 5, 10-year program in place: short-term goals, mid-term goals, long-range plan. These are a list of goals or wishes for the program that will take substantial time. At Wando, we are taking this entire year to formulate our 1, 3, 5, 10 program. No goal is a one-day type of project, but rather larger tasks or achievements that will take us months, weeks, or years to even meet. Begin by defining a successful program. The more concrete you make this, the better. For example, anyone can say, all students learn to love music. While this is significant, it cannot truly be measured and is not tangible. This previous goal is not one to ignore, but should be redefined by, we can measure love for music by our retention rate and by volunteerism for extra playing responsibilities by year 3. I realize this sounds dangerously close to various assessments mandated by districts across the country. While we often roll our eyes, or at least I do, at the latest pedagogical fad, I do feel this precept is pivotal to program health and growth. After you create the 1, 3, 5, 10 plan, this list of tangible growth and accomplishment, next formulate the things necessary for achievement. I call this a wish list. Bob Buckner, retired band director at Western Carolina University in North Carolina, taught me this valuable concept in college. He made a list that hung right beside him in his office at the university. I remember the first time I met him. I asked about the list, which contained words such as semi-trailer and second assistant, things that seemed completely out of the realm of possibility. He told me they were part of his wish list when he started for Western, and at the time there were only 82 students in the marching band. By the time I left school, we did have one semi-trailer and were poised to break 200 in the band. When Bob left Western altogether and retired, almost every item on the list was attained. The band had performed at Grand National several times and the Tournament of Roses parade and had over 450 members. Do not limit yourself with this. State the things that are necessary for healthy growth of the program. Focus on what is needed first, and then we'll worry about the how in this next step. Once we know where we are going and what we need for the trip, we must plot how we are to get there. What are the landmarks along the way and possibly the pitfalls we may encounter? Something to consider. A certain sailing ship's captain once felt that blind determination was all that was necessary for success. He had one singular goal in mind and paid no attention to supplies, personnel, or conditions. Some may call this driven. I call it Herman Melville's tragic novel, Moby Dick. Unfortunately, Ahab represents more of our band directors than not. While you're creating this roadmap, plan for destinations along the way that are fulfilling musically, emotionally, and physically, not only to yourself, but to the staff and students. Ask a few sincere questions concerning the goals, such as, how can I make this more educational? How can I impact the community more? How can I make myself more healthy or happy? How can I engage students more? How can I make this more fun? For example, if retention is a goal, adding 20 more performances that lower your family time and the time of the students with their families is not the answer. However, sponsoring a band bowling night can address some of the questions above. If you wanted to address even more, add a component that asks each student to bring a canned food item as the price of admission, or make a nursing home performance the first stop before the bowling madness ensues. Go even further and invite the staff families and your own along for the fun. The students will get a great kick out of seeing how silly you and your families can be. There are many ways to define success. Determine the necessary materials and plot a direction, but the one thing that is pivotal is a beginning. Nothing goes anywhere without direction and momentum. Start today by jotting down a few things that you consider successful indicators of a program and how long they may take. Next, create a list of things that are needed for those indicators to emerge, your wish list. Finally, build a timeline and a course to follow, making the 1, 3, 5, 10 goals possible. Remember, course changes are always necessary when following a map. Be flexible. Also, storms are an expectation for travel. Do not be surprised or knocked off course for very long. Consider as many worst-case scenarios as possible and then plan accordingly. Any program is like a ship. Students are rowing somewhere they may not be able to see. Parents and administrators are working on deck but may not always understand the direction. The director does not necessarily sit at the wheel, but rather on the crow's nest. He or she cannot directly affect every member of the crew at all times, but must communicate to all the desired direction and possible dangers that lie ahead. Well, I hope there's something here that you can find that's of use. Thank you so much for your time, and best of luck.